war never changes. Well, actually, it does. In fact, that's all it ever seems to do. Once upon a time, the military had to convince crowds of illiterate children to bludgeon one another to a pulp in the middle of a muddy field. But for today's professional murdermen, humans are outdated hardware. Why rely on mindless drones who only follow orders to do your killing when you've got funky flying robots who can do it instead? High-tech UAVs are turning the skies into the front lines, while cheap Chinese consumer drones are proving just as deadly as their million-dollar counterparts. Drones are already surveilling civilian populations, conquering countries that I can't pronounce, and invading the formerly empty and ad-free night sky. I don't want to sound alarmist, but the human drone war is here, and they're coming for you and everyone you love. But first, where did drones come? Shit! While he's distracted, we've got time to talk about my comic. A power struggle erupts among the prisoners of Prestonville, a high-tech slave colony run by an army of robot guards and a sadistic warden who only appears to the inmates as a friendly holographic dog. All these prisoners want is freedom, but the world outside might be just as deadly following an earth-shattering event known only as the Cascade. It's a dark sci-fi prison comedy set in a climate apocalypse, and I think it's pretty good.
I tell you what, I just got finished reading Ordinary Things' new comic, and I love it. I like the drawings. I like the words. I would recommend it to anyone with eyes or who can read.
This is a story I've had in my head for years, and this year I finally found all the right artists to bring it to life. Think of this like the pilot episode, and if you order right now, you'll be helping me tell the complete story as a graphic novel. So check it out at justordinarythings.com and dip your toes in this sweet cesspool. All the way back in 1898, Nikola Tesla harnessed the power of radio waves to remote control a 4-foot boat around a pool, stunning a crowd at Madison Square Garden. Some believed it was magic, others theorized that there must be some sort of trained monkey hidden within, while a Navy admiral in attendance could only remark on its potential to explode his fellow man. In response, Tesla said that with this principle, you may live to see man-made horrors beyond your comprehension. Tesla's prophecy of radio-controlled murder would take nearly a century to come true, but the military got right to work. The British Army created the first pilot-free winged aircraft during the First World War, but despite successful explosive tests, it never made it to the battlefield. That same year, the Americans built the Kettering Bug, an aerial torpedo that could fly 40 miles before shedding its cardboard wings and ploughing into the ground. But it too never fulfilled its destiny of blowing anyone to bits. Other human-free winged flying things followed over the next few decades, but they were mostly used as target practice or to test fancy new weapons systems. Reconnaissance UAVs were first deployed on a large scale during the Vietnam War, but it would take another few decades before the drones finally took revenge on their flightless, fleshy creators. Now, the nation of Israel is about as popular with its neighbours as a tap-dancing insomniac with a fetish for overflowing bathtubs. So it shouldn't have been a surprise when a coalition of Arab states launched a combined attack on the country in 1973. Big Boss lookalike Moshe Dayan was blamed for the country's lack of preparedness as the Yom Kippur War started disastrously for Israel, especially in the skies. The Israeli Air Force's American fighter jets were being intercepted by Soviet-made surface-to-air missile systems given to the Egyptian military. At this time, the Cold War titans treated the Middle East like their own personal weapons testing playground, with the Yom Kippur War serving up proof that Soviet missiles were a colossal threat to America's pricey fighter jets.
How about the American equipment? Has any of that come into action? What should I say? Yes or no? What's good for our relationship? Anyway, we're very happy.
Israel would go on to win the war on the ground, but the battle for the skies had been punishing, with the IAF losing 50 planes in just 3 days. Enter Abraham Kerem, a young aeronautical engineer who would solve Israel's Soviet missile problem and earn himself the unofficial title of the Drone Father. His Tadiran Mastiff was the first modern surveillance drone, with a built-in gyro-stabilized television and panoramic camera. It provided real-time aerial reconnaissance. Alongside the IAI Scout, the Mastiff would change modern warfare forever. When Israel invaded southern Lebanon in 1982, the Israeli Air Force once again encountered Soviet SAM missiles, 19 of them to be exact, which Syrian forces had lined up in the Bekaa Valley. Anticipating Israeli fighter jets, Syria parked their own planes, hoping to make every jet in the sky a confirmed target. Instead, Israel sent in the drones, with the afternoon sun behind them, degrading enemy optical guidance systems. The decoys drew missile fire and activated enemy radars, while others took aerial footage and verified SAM battery locations through their radar's frequency. It was only then that the Israelis scrambled their fighter jets, timing the attack while the Syrians were reloading. After just 2 hours, the IAF had destroyed all but 2 of the Syrian missile batteries without suffering a single loss. Meanwhile, the drones repositioned to loiter over the Syrian airfield, giving Israeli Air Command real-time updates on when enemy fighter jets would arrive in the valley's airspace. What followed was the largest and most one-sided dogfight since the Second World War. The Syrian ground control tried to feed their pilots instructions, but were blocked by Israeli radar jammers. Syrian pilots were effectively blinded, with some fighters reduced to making figures of 8 in a futile attempt to find their target. After 2 days, the battle was over. 85 Syrian fighter jets and 29 missile batteries littered the Bekaa Valley floor, and not a single Israeli casualty was recorded. A devastating drone-fueled victory that became known as the Bekaa Valley Turkey Shoot, and no one was watching as closely as the Americans. After a taste of success, the drone father moved to Hollywood and started his own drone business out of his garage, while an American and Israeli joint operation upgraded the IAI Scout to carry a much larger payload. The RQ-2 Pioneer quickly became the workhouse drone of the US military, and was launched via this cool-ass catapult thing. It flew thousands of hours during the 1991 Gulf War, where it provided route reconnaissance for attack helicopters and used its laser designator to pinpoint Iraqi artillery. But what was a lot more interesting was the Pioneer's contribution to psychological warfare. During the campaign, Iraqi soldiers quickly associated the Pioneer's signature lawnmower hum with the likelihood of them getting blown to bits, which led to this seminal event captured on Failaka Island, where human soldiers surrendered to an unmanned system for the first time in history. Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney praised the RQ-2 system in his report to Congress and launched the American drone industry into the 21st century. I hear America's gonna drone strike us. Oh, well, they better not. Okay, here's the part of the video where it's going to get a little sensitive for some people. So, if you're easily offended or have got a permanent hard-on for da troops, maybe skip the next couple minutes or just watch something else. Maybe check out what Mr. Beast is up to. I hear in his latest vid, whoever eats the most diamonds gets to keep them. The drone father spent the rest of the 1990s launching new drones into the sky and running his business into the ground. He was later hired by General Atomics, who developed his designs into the first effective combat drone, the MQ-1 Predator. Easily identified by its enormous wingspan, its beluga-like head, and the Hellfire missiles attached to its undercarriage. The Predator was a game-changer. George W. was so excited he couldn't help but blab about it to a crowd when it was still technically a CIA secret.
The conflict in Afghanistan has taught us more about the future of our military than a decade of blue ribbon panels and think tank symposiums. The Predator is a good example. This unmanned aerial vehicle is able to circle over enemy forces, gather intelligence, transmit information instantly back to commanders, then fire on targets with extreme accuracy. The brave men and women of our military are rewriting the rules of war with new technologies and old values like courage and honor.
Yeah, because Nothing says courageous or honourable like sitting in a Nevada-based shipping container and using a joystick to flash fry a Pakistani wedding. Sources conflict over when the first lethal drone strike actually took place. The Atlantic points to the failed assassination of Taliban founder Mullah Omar on October 7, 2001. The strike missed its intended target and instead blew up a car containing 3 of his bodyguards. Omar escaped and remained unsizzled until his death in 2013, which probably occurred in Pakistan and was probably caused by tuberculosis. Sources conflict on that one as well. Over the next 20 years, American drone strikes became a lot more frequent and slightly more accurate, often actually killing their intended target alongside an ever-expanding list of innocent people. Now, unless you've been living in a cave or a plush 2-story compound with a harem full of wives playing Half-Life, then you'll have heard this story. There is proof that Osama bin Laden had a copy of Half-Life. There is no proof that he was playing it when he died. I just like to imagine it that way. By 2012, there were Predator drones loitering above countries that weren't the USA, and they were joined by its $32 million upgrade, the MQ-9 Reaper, which left terrorist-shaped holes in Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan. Obama left the White House with a grand total of 563 drone strikes under his belt, compared to the paltry 57 made during the previous administration. In this leaked CIA document, we see how the agency sold the drone program to the former president. Their main argument was that sending in a drone was a lot cheaper and a lot less risky than sending in a SEAL team. America would have you believe that drone strikes aren't war, they just look like it up close. Zoom out and you'll see that they're actually a cost-effective alternative. And this plays out, as the majority of their drone strikes have been conducted in countries where America hadn't even officially declared war. These, I suppose you could call them special military operations, also took place in countries without air defenses or with no inclination to use them. The American government's stated objective was to continuously decapitate terrorist organizations, hoping that they would devolve and disintegrate under progressively incompetent leadership.
Listen, I am the most Al-Qaeda one here.
They came up with a cute little metaphor for this strategy, calling it mowing the grass, spelling out the need for regular maintenance and the strategy's major downside. Obama-era counterterrorism expert Bruce Riedel explains, "You've got to mow the lawn all the time. The minute you stop mowing, the grass is going to grow back." Studies generally, although not uniformly, indicate that strikes can reduce the number of terrorist attacks for 1 to 4 weeks in locations where strikes occur. Maybe mowing the grass is the perfect metaphor, because if you know anything about lawns, which I happen to, you'll know the more grass you cut, the faster it'll grow back. I don't know about you, but if someone blew up all of my male family members when I was 9, I'd be liable to still be a bit angry about it 10 years later. Of course, all this generational trauma is great news for drone manufacturers, as these things are expensive and accident-prone. It's a billion-dollar industry, so there are a lot of companies trying to get in on the action. When the US first started fighting terror with terror, their reported aim was to eliminate Al-Qaeda altogether, which kind of half worked. Let me explain. The core group that instigated 9/11 have either died, disbanded, or been permanently imprisoned, while the overall group is larger than ever. And empirical research indicates that drone strikes have had no discernible effect on the number of attacks the group conducts. But you know what they say? It's all about location. The number of attacks may not have decreased, but their scale and proximity to America has.
That no matter how long it takes, no matter where you hide, if you are a threat to our people, the United States will find you and take you out.
This all being said, the Biden administration has significantly wound down the number of drone strikes. Old Man Joe might not take the White House lawnmower out as much as he used to, but that's because he's getting a load of foreign guys to mow the lawn for him. The biggest impact of America's decade-long drone campaign is that it set the precedent that extraterritorial murder was A-OK as long as you did it with a flying robot. Since 2005, armed drones have become the must-have accessory of every bloodthirsty military with a bloated budget. The US has sold drones to NATO members and approved selling to India in 2018. leaving non-NATO countries to fend for themselves. They could turn to China, who sell the K-Hong 3 and 4. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the UAE have all imported them. But like the American drones they are mimicking, these Chinese ones come with a hefty price tag. That's fine if you're planning on flying them in a place where they're unlikely to encounter air defenses, but in real, actual war, a fleet of Global Hawks, CH-4s or Reapers could be a black hole in your kill squad's budget. War is just like any other business. If you can provide the same service for half the cost, you're going to slay the competition. In April 2016, a new drone took off from a Turkish runway and completely disrupted the industry. The personal project of Selçuk Bayraktar, the son of the company's founder and Turkey's very own budget Elon Musk. A celebrity aeronaut endorsed by the Erdogan regime. Actually, he's part of the family, the son-in-law to the president, whose every tweet is met by a swarm of simping reply guys. When the TB2 was first launched by the Turkish military, it was a brutal success, collecting 72 confirmed kills in its first month. When the TB2 was exported to Azerbaijan for their conflict with Armenia in 2020, the propaganda it produced was just as valuable as the targets it exploded. Footage of the attacks was shared on digital billboards in the capital of Baku. It's a quick-fire montage of tanks, logistical targets, and trenches of Armenian soldiers getting obliterated by the TB2. I'm not going to show you that footage, but if you want to see it, it's still up on the Azerbaijani Ministry of Defence's YouTube channel. The Erdogan regime has taken every opportunity to showcase the TB2 as a source of national pride, at a time where the only thing soaring higher than their drones is their rate of inflation. 73% of Turkey's young people find their own country as bland and unappealing as the Subway sandwich filling that their country isn't named after. And Bayraktar's own celebrity has been supercharged. Rarely photographed out of his aviator shades, he's just like Maverick, except his targets aren't politically vague NPCs. The TB2 is impressive though. It is a murder industry disrupting phenomenon that has won the hearts and minds of the Turkish people. The bombs it carries can adjust their trajectories in mid-air and are so accurate that they can be delivered directly into an infantry trench. Most importantly though, they are very cheap. For the price of one top-dollar American Reaper drone, you could get a fleet of 30 to 50 TB2s. Military analysts had previously assumed these slow, low-flying drones would be of little use, but they underestimated one thing: the cost of shooting them down. You need a reliable surface-to-air missile to take this baby down, and they are a lot more expensive. Which is great when you're fighting a military that has a lot less money than it pretends to. In the last year, Ukraine has become Bayraktar's best customer, spending their own and America's money on several fleets of TB2s. In the first months of Putin's war, the TB2 was instrumental in slowing the pace of Russia's ground invasion. Hundreds of tanks, trucks, missile batteries, and command posts taken out by the TB2 or by insanely accurate American missile systems aided by drone reconnaissance. Its power was so palpable that memes about the TB2's prowess spread across the Ukrainian internet. To support victims of the war, you can even buy a plushie TB2. You know, for the kids! The people took notice, literally singing the praises of the little Turkish murder machine that beat the odds.
Bayraktar. Bayraktar. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Bayraktar. Bayraktar.
The conflict in Ukraine is the first all-out drone war, with both sides invested heavily in unmanned systems, as well as the electronic defenses needed to take them out. I think the most fascinating effect of this is how drone footage has migrated online, facilitating propaganda as well as open source intelligence. Keyboard warriors are living up to their names. They might be lurking on dingy, meme-filled subreddits, but they're having a material effect on the war zones that they're ghoulishly obsessed with. They are using their Cheeto-tinted fingers to catalogue, analyse and price up Ukrainian and Russian equipment losses. The collective internet hive mind is collating the kind of intelligence that the CIA once had to just make up. After the first few months of fighting, the Russians were able to blow through Ukraine's entire fleet of TB2s, but only after it had successfully stalled Putin's invasion. Turkey would send more, but in an April press conference in a Kiev subway, Zelensky took the opportunity to downplay the importance of the Turkish drone. Russia might have learned how to counter the TB2, but it bled much more expensive equipment in the process. The TB2's dollar store price tag means that even when it loses a battle, it's still winning on the balance sheet. In response, Russia has turned to an even cheaper drone, the kind someone might cook up in their garage. For the most part, Russian-made drones aren't worth the rubles that Russian generals are pocketing instead of using to develop them. Russia first started using its own brand loitering munitions in March, the Kalashnikov Kubla, which has spent about as much time lying smashed on the pavement as your average Russian conscript. In July, Kalashnikov revealed that the upgraded Zala Lancet had made its way to Ukraine by releasing a timely montage of destruction to prove that at least one of their weapons worked. But even in their own propaganda, Ukrainian troops could be seen spotting and then running from the drone, suggesting that it's so low-flying as to be obvious or just loud as fuck. There have also been reports of the Lancet being shot out of the air with nothing but small arms. Seeing all this, Putin has had no choice but to import his murder machines from Iran. The arrival of Iranian suicide drones in Ukraine was confirmed in September, when Telegram channels began posting videos of them flying overhead in Odessa. Its distinctive Concorde-like silhouette and its signature whine were unmistakable. But the Shahed 136's first offensive success was an attack on a Saudi Aramco refinement facility in 2019. These single-use loitering munitions are fired in groups of 5 or 10, so while you might shoot some down, they are likely to overwhelm your ground defenses. The Iranians have cobbled these things together using pre-existing military hardware, as well as parts that you could just as easily find on eBay. They are guided by the same GLONASS control unit that you'd find in a consumer DJI drone. The Shahed is powered by a 50-horsepower moped engine, which is responsible for its incredibly loud lawnmower-like hum. That sound, its ability to loiter overhead, and its targeted use on civilian infrastructure has proven psychologically ruinous for the people of Ukraine.
Рве і пішов, бух, і взірвав. Ось така ситуація.
Я вообще проснувся від жужжання якогось.
Each unit only costs about 20 grand, making them an incredibly budget-friendly alternative to $1 million cruise missile. This is something that Putin has had to think about since this invasion has become a deeper money sink than the Black Sea palace that he's hiding in. Putin has raided the national welfare budget to keep this invasion going, and he's plugged that hole by sending many of its likely recipients to the front lines. Though importing this equipment can be seen as a source of shame and weakness, after all, Russia's military is supposed to be the best in the world. And their use on civilian targets and Ukraine's energy infrastructure betrays a strategy of a military that no longer wants to attack its opponents head-on. But Putin is also desperate to shift focus onto a relationship with a country whose leaders will still stand near him when it's time for the obligatory photo shoot. This has left the country's top propaganda spewers stumbling over the party line, unsure if they should praise these Iranian imports or claim that they aren't Iranian at all.
Хотят, наоборот, получить в свои руки иранские дроны, которые доказали свою высочайшую эффективность на Украине.
Наоборот, получить в свои руки иранские дроны, которые доказали...
Эти беспилотники, читайте вот на обломках после поражения целей, там четко видно...
По-русски написано.
По-русски, Герань-2.
Иранцы писали по-русски, но нет, конечно же, значит, писали русские. Если русские писали, значит, русские и произвели.
Though everything was eventually made clear by this Russian official from the Defense Ministry in this hot mic moment where he was recorded saying the quiet part out loud.
раскачивать не будем, поэтому я очень прошу вас сильно на этих иранских, потому что это классика истории. Жопа есть, а слова нет, да? Мы все знаем, что они иранские, но власти не признали.
Руслан Николаевич. Да, приветствую, Руслан Николаевич, давайте.
For all the fear and destruction that these suicide drones have wrought, they are quite easy to intercept. On October 12th, British intelligence officials estimated that Ukraine had shot down about 60% of the Shahed 136 munitions. By October 20th, that intercept rate had climbed to about 86%. But just like the TB2, countering them is a lot more costly than using them. Killing the Shahed before it has a chance to kill itself can require the use of extremely expensive Javelin missiles. A single Javelin is already 4 times as expensive as a drone, and that's not accounting the cost of the launcher or the possibility of losing the man who's firing it. One recent analysis suggested that it only cost the Russians $18 million to launch a drone attack, whereas it cost Ukraine $28 million to defend against it. Drone war, as we see it here, is all about forcing your opponent into a lose-lose decision. Either expensively defend against them, or suffer the even more expensive and demoralizing damage they inflict. In a confirmation of this strategy, Russia has ordered 2,400 more drones, and there are rumors of them negotiating a deal to manufacture them domestically, possibly to ensure their supply if the Iranian regime stops being able to deliver them for some reason. But since the beginning of the conflict, both sides have been using even cheaper drones, and they are having a startling effect on the war and how people are watching it abroad. The same Chinese consumer drones that people use to spy on nudist beaches and overproduce their YouTube content have been present in Ukraine since the beginning of the conflict. Most of them are from DJI, the world's largest manufacturer by a significant margin. It alone is a billion-dollar business, complete with its own drone-friendly mega headquarters in the heart of China's tech capital. The CCP have been using this toy as the aerial wing of their QR-coded zero-COVID surveillance dystopia. Do what the drones say, or they'll airdrop a robot dog to take out your kneecaps in a Xinjiang street brawl. Back on Europe's only active battlefield, these babies are completely changing the logic of a traditional ground offensive. The element of surprise has become impossible in the face of their long-distance surveillance capacity, and this has given the Ukrainians a home team advantage, as the army aren't the only ones with the ability to surveil Russian forces. Tanks and massed infantry formations are beginning to look like large, slow, expensive targets for the cheap precision weapons that these drones are guiding. And it wasn't long before both sides were using the must-have Christmas present of 2021 into an improvised weapon of war. Here, a group of Russian soldiers tie a hand grenade to a DJI Mavic 3 with a $15 servo motor and some shoelaces. In April, they were being used by Ukrainian infantry units to guide mortar rounds, and larger consumer models were delivering the explosives themselves. There are some more questionable examples of battlefield innovation, but this machine gun-rigged drone definitely gets points for creativity. By the summer, it was estimated that the Ukrainian military had 6,000 consumer drones in active use, and some of them they were getting for free from donations by sympathetic Westerners who'd been watching the war through the drone's eye. Unlike military drones, these glorified toys are designed to capture content-friendly footage and can be easily operated by anyone who's watched a YouTube tutorial. The variety of footage these things are capturing and disseminating online has been a revolution for open source intelligence and a propaganda boon for Ukraine. You will have likely seen the constant supply of PG-13 legacy media-friendly footage of ammunition dumps and unoccupied trucks going up in clickbait explosions. But you don't have to dig very deep to find a bevy of eye-bleached drone footage circulating on Reddit, Telegram, and Twitter. For good taste and monetization reasons, I'm not going to show you any of that footage. But let's just say there's enough of it out there that Ukrainian war songs have picked up on the theme of Russians getting fucked up in their foxholes.
One scrolled into your strange to have a smoke and hide. A little sneaky Chinese drone was buzzing in the night. The smoke went up and bits of dust are scattered all around. He wants the star of episode of How I Met Around. Bang, bang, fun is gone.
Chinese drones with shoelaces wrapped around them are completely disrupting the century-old tactic of using foxholes to protect infantry from artillery fire. Russia's top-down cable news propaganda network is also looking painfully outdated compared to the decentralized internet hive mind taking drone footage and making memes out of it. Here, a Russian drone is blown to bits on its way to delivering its payload. And here's the same footage again from Twitter user Baraktar1Love, who has added useful commentary alongside goofy music and GIFs. Turns out the revolution won't be televised, it'll be sharing a timeline with cat videos and dudes hitting vape pens in a Carl Jr.'s. War always changes. Every conflict, every battle, every new piece of technology creates new challenges and gives rise to new tactics. And drones aren't done disrupting the battlefield yet. You have probably seen these incredible drone displays that are frequently replacing fireworks. A dragon flies across the night sky, a godlike face hovers above the mushroom-munching masses at Burning Man, and hallelujah, it's raining drones as 200 malfunction and clatter to the pavement. You might have heard these things described as swarm drones, but that isn't quite accurate. These light show devices only follow a predetermined, choreographed route with no awareness of their surroundings. Real swarm drones, though, are already in the late stages of development, able to move and communicate with one another, while AI allows them to independently dodge obstacles without direction. These systems could soon be truly unmanned. What is the natural endpoint of drones if not one without the need of a pudgy human finger to pull the trigger? The drone wars are here and there is no going back. We might be flying towards a future where front lines are made primarily or even entirely of unmanned systems. A glimpse of that future has already hovered above Ukraine. In this footage, the first recorded drone-on-drone fight was captured in an active war zone. In other words, this is war, fought by man-made horrors beyond our comprehension. Thanks for watching. I hope you didn't find it too depressing or terrifying. And if you aren't completely sick of sci-fi dystopias, then check out mine in the link below. You can order it right now and it would mean an awful lot to me. While you're down there, you might as well also hit the bell to be notified because my end of year video is coming up. I'm already making notes and, well, if you've been around this year, you'll know there's a whole lot to talk about. Alright, thanks for watching and don't let the bastards grind you down.